Ladies and gentlemen, welcome again. We have some positive Starfield news. With only a few more weeks to go in 2023, Bethesda has just given us a look at what lies ahead for Starfield in 2024. Yesterday, December 20th, Bethesda released an end-of-the-year update for Starfield. And in addition to thanking everyone for playing and to celebrate their biggest launch in the studio's history, they also talk a bit about how they are planning to improve the game. Earlier this week, we discussed Bethesda's strategy for Starfield's future, with its reliance on the modding community and how player feedback was being handled. Now, that last part, surprisingly enough, is one of the first things mentioned in this update, so let's go take a look at it. The post opens up with some statistics about our activities in the game, a marketing slide if you will, and about 13 million players have spent over 22 million days in game, which sounds like a huge number of time in game, but next to that, however, is a number that doesn't seem too impressive, which is the average playtime of around 40 hours per player, which averages out to about 2.5 hours per week if played from early access to this week. Another figure that immediately struck me as odd is at the bottom of the list, where it says here 1.6 million Starborn players, which means out of those 13 million people, only about 10% have crossed the NG Plus threshold, which seems to indicate that either people don't find it appealing enough, or that they never made it that far into the game in those 40 hours average playtime before quitting on Starfield. However, below it is where the real interesting info can be found, starting with the following. First, we're targeting updates roughly every 6 weeks starting in February. These updates will include everything from quality of life improvements to content and feature updates. Join our Steam beta branch, yada yada yada. So updates roughly every 6 weeks, that indicates working according to some sort of a schedule. So combining multiple sprints in one update. And Todd mentioned about a month ago that there are supposedly still 250 developers working on Starfield, so I can only imagine how much work they can consistently churn out. For some quality of life improvements, I can see them being completed faster than a content or a feature update, depending on the skill of course, but 6 weeks seems like a nice time period, so we don't get spammed every week, every 2 weeks with some sort of minor update. This way, a 6-week time period, this package will carry some actual value. So it continues here, we've been reading all your feedback and are excited to start launching these new features. We'll be adding new ways to travel, and you'll now be able to access city maps while exploring the major cities. For those of you who love shipbuilding, we'll also be expanding on ship customization with ship decorations, new shipbuilding options, and more. Let's just take the temporary stunt with the Steam review responses, let's leave it for what it is and move on. This reads as though that they did filter out the actual points made by reviewers, such as not having decent city maps. But the most exciting point for me personally in this segment is the remark about adding new ways to travel. Sure, the way they describe it here is really vague and it can mean a million things, but I do hope it has something to do with adding planetary vehicles or a more immersive way for space travel. Since the fast traveling and the loading screens are, I think, by far the biggest issue that people have with Starfield, not being believable or immersive enough, I guess you might be rooting for a solution here in this area. Now let me know in the comments, what are you hoping for when it comes to improvements on travel? This next bit, we're also excited to be adding all new gameplay options. With these new settings, you will be able to alter your gameplay to allow for an easier or more challenging experience that will expand beyond our normal difficulty setting. These will allow you to easily customize carry capacity, cargo access distance, ship damage, vendor credits, how you suffer afflictions, new survival mechanics, and more. Now again, this really feels like they actually have read all the feedback and made a backlog list of all stuff they need to work on and prioritized it according to what players seem to be doing the most in game. So going back to the marketing slide, it seems like a lot of people are just, you can see this on comments made by people on YouTube videos and on Reddit. The most interesting part for people to keep playing at this point seems to just be doing POI after POI, you know, landing somewhere, going to a location, clearing it out, looking for loot, going back, do it all over again. So most of the points in this sum up are connected to exactly that. Carry capacity when increased, enabling you to just, you know, keep going. Cargo access distance, reducing the time wasted to have run back to your ship to unload. It's kind of like saying you are now landing closer to the POI. Vendor credits, maybe allowing you to cap it up to 100k, shutting down the repetitive need to wait at the stupid bench for 48 hours straight. This is all connected to feedback related to combat activities, it seems. So either during combat or after combat. What you do, you go sell your stuff. And I really like how they address the health inflictions and the survival element, because it seems they want to provide some depth here. So it would be very cool to see a more believable experience of being on a planet and suddenly having to shift focus from making your way back to your ship as if nothing's going on, you're just carrying along your loot, to actually making it back at all. And next, official mod support will be coming to Starfield with the launch of Creations. Beginning early next year, Starfield will be getting its own exporter and you'll have access to a new creation kit. Modding has always been an enormous part of our games, with incredible community-made content constantly bringing fresh new experiences. So I guess basically this is touching on what I mentioned before. It seems BGS is relying heavily on the modding community to start fixing bugs, adding more content to draw in more players over time. Unfortunately, and I had a dialogue with this with a person who responded to one of my videos, the guy that made Skyrim together, so allowing for multiplayer, I think he started working on Starfield together on the first day of early access. 2 weeks ago he decided to drop it because of his words, the game is boring, bland, and exploration was no longer taking place in a lively and handcrafted environment. After reading the last sentence with the scale and systems in Starfield, we can't wait to see what you come up with. It really seems that they just had the goal of laying a foundation up to a certain level of Starfield being a playable game, and then expect modders to just start filling in the blanks or to enrich the basic set of POI and quest lines to make the game more appealing. This kind of feels like Bethesda has built a house, it's laid the foundation, maybe 1 or 2 walls, and they're calling in modders to just make sure the rest of the house gets built. I can be wrong, but this is how this comes across to me. And lastly, the team is hard at work on the development of Shattered Space, our first major expansion coming next year. You'll have new content, new story content, new locations, new gear, and much more. We can't wait to share more with you next year. Saying we'll have new locations seems to connect to the previous paragraph, and every DLC will basically be another wall built to that house or another floor added, over time making it a house you can actually live in because the rain isn't pouring in anymore because they just added a roof, etc. But before, you know, you had leakages everywhere. And new gear, I mean, I've seen so many complaints about the absolute most subpar part of combat, which is melee combat. So I'm just hoping for new types of swords, new types of melee weapons in general, and with similar mods that are craftable now for ranged weapons as well. We'll have to wait and see what Starfield will become in 2024, and if the DLC and the improvements can basically keep the flame burning long enough for all of us to make Starfield a more seasoned experience. In the meantime, I will keep covering Starfield, so thank you all for your support in watching my content and trusting me with a like or even a sub. They are highly appreciated. Thank you guys. For now, good luck and have fun gaming, and talk to you soon. Bye.